Hello and welcome to a brand new episode of the Daily Debate. My name is Ahmed Nader, and tonight we'll be focusing on the Egyptian support, the continuous support of Egypt to Lebanon under the tenure of President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi and the political leadership led by President al-Sisi, as we did see the participation of the President in an aid or a donor conference for Lebanon in the past few days, and the statements made by President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi that the economic crisis is related to the political vacuum, to the political crisis in Lebanon, that there is a governmental vacuum, a political vacuum in Lebanon, and this should end as soon as possible for the sake of the Lebanese people. Those statements we will be focusing on during the course of the episode of the Daily Debate for tonight with my dear guest for tonight, Dr. Ibrahim Al-Ghazawy, the Professor of International Law. Thank you very much for being with us tonight on the Daily Debate.
Thank you so much.
Okay. We will be starting with a report about the participation of President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi through the video conference in an international aid conference to Lebanon. We'll be having more details about this participation in this report.
President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi earlier last week said that Egypt's hands are extended to the international community to provide support to Lebanon. President al-Sisi's remarks came as he took part via video conference in the international conference to raise funds to support Lebanon's humanitarian needs, co-hosted by France and the United Nations. He told the conference that Egypt's hands are extended to the international community to unite and harness all the capabilities to support Lebanon and build a better future for its people. He added that Lebanon is still capable of rising from the current setback and returning as prosperous and unique. President al-Sisi addressed the Lebanese people during the virtual conference, saying that the country has been a beacon of culture, art and thought, and a prominent tributary of Arab ingenuity. Lebanon, which has always been a beacon of culture, art and thought, and important tributary of Arab ingenuity, is still able, with the determination of its sons, to rise from the current setback and return again to the prosperous and unique. The International Conference on Lebanon seeks to raise hundreds of millions of dollars to support the Lebanese humanitarian needs, estimated by the UN to be at least $375 million. The UN says more than half of the Lebanese people now live in poverty, and 1 in 3 Lebanese suffer from food insecurity a year after a massive blast at Beirut's port destroyed property damage worth $15 billion.
Welcome back. You're still watching the Daily Debate. As I did say in the beginning that we'll be focusing on the Egyptian relations or the bilateral ties between Egypt and Lebanon under the tenure of President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi, more specifically Dr. Ibrahim Al-Ghazawy, the participation of President al-Sisi in an international aid conference to Lebanon, saying that the hands of Egypt are extended to support Lebanon now and forever. How do you see those statements?
A real expression of the genuine stance of Egypt when it comes to extending the hand of support to our brothers in any Arab country in need. And when we talk about Lebanon, yes, Lebanon is going through very sensitive and tough passage of events recently and suffering from a lot of problems, and this is a time for Egypt to do what Egypt used to do in such tough times in supporting other Arab countries in need. That's not new from Egypt, and I believe that there is a lot of tools that Egypt can give to leverage the situation in Lebanon But honestly, also, the Lebanese people, they have to do what they must do. They must do what
Should
they
help themselves
yeah,
first.
They should help themselves first. I think this is the big issue today, and this is the real challenge that faces the Lebanese existence today. They have a lot of problems, and most of these problems, in reality, could be easily overcome. But there is something behind some people or some players behind the scenes who are very much keen to see Lebanon getting down and not able to be standing up. And they are planning and doing their best to make the Lebanese people suffer more and more. And this must stop. And as I said, it's the responsibility of the Lebanese people themselves today to show up in a much brighter and clearer way to say we have to, as Lebanese people, to be over all sectarian considerations and all this ethnic problems and clashes, and we have to support the entity of our country. This is the time that they have to do this, and I think that unless this happens today, not only Egypt but even the whole world together cannot help Lebanese people to get through.
Speaking of support sent by Egypt, I would like to shed more light on the foreign agenda of President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi and Foreign Minister Sameh Shoukry in general in the past 6 or 7 years under the tenure of President al-Sisi, not just for the Arab world, not just for Africa, but for the world and the neighboring countries in specific, as we did see yesterday or the day before, Egypt sending helicopters for the wildfires in Greece, for example. How do you see the foreign agenda in general, and how did it enhance the opportunities of Egypt to be having better bilateral relations with our neighbors and with the outside world in general?
Well, that's really an issue today when we try to look into the turn of Egypt foreign relations today. Yes. We have to see all the foreign relations since President Sisi take responsibility and took office in 2014. We witness this constant and steady increase in terms of the tight and good relations with the outside world. If we talk about specifically about Africa, we have to say that the Egypt-Africa relations have witnessed a huge transition, positively of course, in terms of not only in terms of security or in terms of fighting terrorism, but also in terms of economic support, in terms of education, in terms of training, in terms of opening all possible channels of communication and relations between Egypt and other countries in Africa.
Yes.
And that takes us back to a prior time when there was a mistake, when we neglected our African relations. And we today probably we know that was a colossal mistake. President Sisi realizes very well from the first moment for him in office that there is no real change in Egypt reality without changing the whole terrain and the panoramic vision of Egypt foreign relations. On top of these relations came Africa and Egypt relations. Not only because of Nile River is coming from African country, which is for itself enough consideration to do that, but also we have to see and we have to realize that most of our problems in Egypt, and the same for other African countries, the same applies also, our economic problems find the solution in this sort of cooperation, in tighter cooperation between Egypt and other African countries. This complementary attitude of relations with economy comes on top. we have to know that, yes, the answer is Africa for a lot of Egypt economy problems,
Yes.
chronic problems. And the same applies to African countries as well. They do need Egypt to be with them today. So it's, as we usually say, it's a win-win relation between Egypt and other African countries. And fortunately, today we know this by heart. And I believe that the tempo of developing such relations between Egypt and African countries is really going in a very satisfactory manner. And we hope also that it goes and expand more and more in future. I will talk specifically about the trade level between Egypt and African countries. Still, so far, most of the trade between African countries is focusing more on the outside world, in Europe and
Yes.
China and other countries. More than probably 70 or 72% of the African trade is with the outside world, away from Africa, which is something that we have to rethink about today, because in Egypt we can do a lot to change this figure.
The inter-African
Of course, under
trade agreements.
Yes, under African trade agreements. And we have also to understand that this is a window for Egypt economy from the other side, that we have to, that we have already a market, an open market in Africa, with most of African countries, people are very much welcoming Egypt and Egyptian products in their countries.
Yes.
And in many occasions, I've been to several African countries, and I know by heart that any Egyptian products in Africa is very much welcome, probably more than other products of other countries. And we have to utilize this privilege given to us. From the other side, also African countries, they have a lot of problems. We have to admit, when it comes to security, when it comes to fighting terrorism, when it comes to internal problems and clashes. And Egypt, in that stance, can do a lot to support these countries in terms of training, fighting terrorism, cooperation in crime prevention, and whether through bilateral or group cooperation in a situation or in a topic by nature that cannot be held by only by one country. When we talk about security, when we talk about terrorism,
Yes.
it's an activity by nature that involve a lot of countries altogether. So because crime today is border crossing, terrorism today is border crossing.
Cooperation is a must.
Is a must.
Yes.
So when we talk about this, we realize that this development and the tempo of Egypt-African diplomatic and other relations at the very same time, since President Sisi took office in 2014, was a must. And we have even to invest more and more in that direction, hoping that we can fill this vacuum in terms of the African products and the African needs, which usually fulfilled by commodities coming from China or other spots or India or any other locations in the world. Since we have already in Egypt these capabilities of...
Could be an advantage economically.
Of course.
And the
For
same
them and for
agenda,
us.
it applies for the Arab world.
Exactly.
As we do see for Lebanon, as we did see for Iraq as well, the Minister of
Libya,
Defense.
for
yes,
Libya,
for Libya.
for
But the Minister of
Tunisia.
Defense of Iraq was here in Egypt, and the reception of President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi for him, with the message coming from Prime Minister of Iraq, Mustafa al-Kadhimi, to President al-Sisi. How do you see the same agenda is being applied to the Arab world simultaneously with Africa and the neighboring countries and the world?
Well, it's a gift, I have to say. It's a gift for us in Egypt and also for Iraq and other Arab countries that we have this alternative still existing and powerful. We can support, we can rely on each other, we can find the answer to some of other countries' problems in some other Arab countries instead of going to the outside world. And of course, we have to understand today that if you go outside the Arab world, you will not be safe. You will be, of course, trapped into the international interest, conflicting interests, and you will pay a lot as a country.
Yes.
They know that by heart in Syria today. They know that by heart in Lebanon. They know that by heart in Iraq, in Libya, even in Tunisia, in Yemen. So the alternative should be Arabic. The alternative should be Egypt for Arab countries, and for Egypt also other Arab countries should be the alternative. And fortunately, the natural resources in the Arab world are really rich.
Yes.
But unfortunately, on the other hand, we did not utilize this bounty.
It is
and
how
this
to use
richness.
what we have.
Yes, it's how to utilize this, how to use this to the maximum possible level of usage, which cannot be done without cooperation.
Yes.
Because when you talk about economy, you talk about science, you talk about invention, you talk about researches, you talk about development.
We need to complete each other.
Yeah, there is circles, and these circles have all to work together, and they have to be linked together. And no country in the Arab world have all these circles all together inside this country.
Yes.
So what we say today is, yes, we can complement each other. But we must do this today, because we are for other Arab countries the much safer choice. We are the much more sustainable choice also, I have to say. I think the problems, the sizzling problems that take place today in the Middle East and Arab world today is also another serious sign that we should today change this sort of reliance over foreign powers. We have to rely on the Arab unity. We have to rely on the Arab the Arab attitude of resolving our problems. We have the Arab League. We have also Egypt. We have Saudi Arabia. Two big Arab countries, and
Yes.
can be able to intervene and can be able to support. And as we say always, this is the house of the Arab world. So I think the answer to a lot of Lebanese problems coming also from that direction. Back to the Lebanese issue, which is the topic of the episode today.
Yes.
It's we have to admit that one of the most painful factors of this deteriorated situation in Lebanon is the foreign intervention in Lebanon. Hezbollah and support coming from Iranian direction, and at the end you find yourself as a state with two armies, and you are not able to control the sovereign principles or factors in the country. If the arms is at the hands of everyone, then you cannot, as a sovereign state, you cannot extend your control over the events in your country, and that's a big problem in Lebanon today. And the same time applies to Syria, the same time applies to Libya, and the same time applies to Iraq and Yemen. The weapons at the hand of everyone in the states. And it means at the end that there is no real sovereign state that can impose the law, that can impose the rules, that can control the life tempo in this society.
Yes.
And that's why I think that Egypt is capable of supporting Saudi Arabia also. As I said, the Arab alternative, so the foreign intervention in Lebanon or Iraq or Syria or in other Arab countries is much safer. And of course, we have to admit that, like for instance, the Libyan issue for Egypt, we deal with the Libyan problems as an Egyptian one.
Yes.
Because the interests of the Libyan people is typically the same as the Egyptian people.
Affects us.
Of course. So it means that if there is a country keen to save and protect the Libyan people, it should be Egypt, which happens on the reality. going back to the development of the handling of the Libyan crisis and problems, you will find always Egypt there standing and trying to support, trying to help different partners of the Libyan crisis to put hands together and set a negotiation table and peacefully resolve their problems. So Egypt cannot do this, by the way, unless Egypt is a secured and stable state, which is really very obvious today. And we are proud of that.
Yes. Speaking of the role of Hezbollah, how do you see the parameter of the role of Hezbollah in the political crisis? And of course, it leads to the economic crisis of Lebanon as well. How do you see the role of Hezbollah in this?
It's a thorn in the neck of the Lebanese society and Lebanese state as well. And I see it as a tangible and strong hindrance in the way of stability in Lebanon, simply because any modern state should have only one army. And this army should be receiving orders and commands from the president or the legal leadership of this country. So if you find yourself in a situation where there is militias and highly armed groups which are not official army of the state, then you should expect a lot of problems. And the latest problems that we can talk about is what happened in the problems between the southern Lebanon and northern Israel, and some rockets were launched by Hezbollah bases in the southern part of Lebanon. And of course that have urged Israeli invasion to some Lebanese spots in retaliation to what happened to them. And all of this happened in absence of the official will and behavior of the Lebanese state itself. They don't know what is going on. Yes. So this is really the dilemma, and it has to stop immediately. We cannot talk about stability in Lebanon as long as there is several armies, there is several police forces, as long as the weapons at the hands of everyone. It means simply that the official state is very weak and is not able to handle the basic functions of the modern state, which is sovereignty and controlling the territory of the state itself. And talking about that, the recent history of the situation in Lebanon tells clearly that most of the problems that incurred Israeli invention and aggression against Lebanon was not because of an official Lebanese stances or situations or behavior. Yes. It was in retaliation to Hezbollah in Lebanon, and Hezbollah launches attacks against some neighboring countries' spots or targets. For how long this is going to continue? This is the question. Yes. And as you said, this interlocking relations between economy and politics.
One thing leads to the other.
Of course, you cannot talk about economy if you have this chaotic political life in the society. Yes. Of course, economy, to have a prosperous economy, it means you have stable political life. You have security in the ground. And if you as a state is not able to provide security, provide means to protect investment, means to protect...
I can't even form a government.
Of course, if you cannot even, as you said, it's even very tough for them to form a government, which is...
For months.
For very slight issue.
Yes.
That takes us to the bigger issue of, keeping security and public order in the streets of Lebanon, which is a real problem and challenge today. So, of course, economy cannot be, even move one step ahead. In a very tough situation, the crisis is even deepening day after day. And, of course, there is no way out so far, unless the basic, causes for the problem genuinely and openly addressed. First of all, you know, the ethnicity in Lebanon should be set aside, and the overall national interest of the country and the state called Lebanon.
But do you think
should
this
be
would
above
ever
all.
happen?
It must happen. Well, yes, I do agree with what you might be thinking about today, that this is not very likely to
They have been trying
happen.
for months to just
Yeah,
form a
yeah,
government, and
yeah.
they failed.
But you know, this looming crisis, deepening and suffering and pain in the near future, without any glimpse of hope for positive change, this could be a drive for them to change attitude, to understand that it's a time for them today to let the homeland's interest supersede and go much higher and above all this narrow sectarian, you know, interests for the groups, different groups and different ethnicities in Lebanon. And as again, probably we started the episode with this issue. If this doesn't happen today, no other country can support Lebanon. This is as a start. It has to be like, you know, starting from scratch. We have to agree that the interest of the state, of our homeland country called Lebanon, should be above all, above being a Muslim or Christian or Shiite or Sunni or Durzi or whatever.
So there are political problems, there are economic problems in Lebanon, and in August of last year, the Beirut port blast.
Of course.
How do you see the support given by Egypt in the past year specifically to Lebanon?
Well, in the framework of humanitarian support, Egypt has always been there, not only to Lebanon, by the way, but to Sudan, to southern Sudan, the state, to Chad, to most of the African countries, to Greece, and to other countries in need, to Tunisia, and that's, by the way, this is our duty. And Egypt is, I always say, when Egypt is stable and strong, this goes for the interest of the whole world around us, especially Arab and African world. And I think that when Egypt is feeling good, that will be for the interest of the whole world around us, especially in the Middle East region. When we talk about a region by nature going through a lot of problems, most of the time, I have to say. So stability is like a rare commodity in the region. So when you find a stable country like Egypt, with our economy is moving ahead in the right direction and getting stronger and more powerful over days, this strength and this power is not only for Egyptians, it goes for the whole region. And we see that. We see that because Egypt, we feel all proud and satisfied when we support our brothers in any other Arab countries or African country in need.
Yes.
And of course, we hope that we can be able even more and more to extend that sort of support to other countries, simply because it means that we are more powerful. Powerful not in terms of military, but powerful in terms of you know, economy, in terms of stability, in terms of being secured country, and being a sovereign state that can able to extend help and support to other countries around it.
During the participation of President Sisi at the video conference, or the Donors' 8th Conference for Lebanon, he mentioned the international community and the reaction to what is happening in Lebanon. How do you see the reaction of the international community to Lebanon, specifically in the past year?
Well, it's sweet words most of the time. I always look at which is not, you know, by the way, nothing new for the international community. Yes, they support mostly emotionally, but in reality,
nothing on the ground.
Nothing on the ground. This is an issue we have to think about. The international community, yes, it's very good to seek support from international community. There is some individual countries and you know, within the wider frame of the international community, yes, that can be able even to, develop more support and go from just, emotional support to real support with some material donations and other, material support to a country in need, like, most of, or many European countries and United States of America. But at the end, we have to remember always that it's us. The major responsibility for any society in crisis is that, to realize that we can only support ourselves much more than any other people. That applies not only to Lebanon, the same in Libya. Yes, the international community supported Libyan development in recent months, hoping that in December there will be elections.
Yes.
But if Libyan people, themselves do not come together to agree on, the passage of events from now until December 2021, and instead of cooperation, hopefully this will not happen, but disagreement comes up, then we will face another, setback to the 0 point in Libya.
Cycle.
Yeah, we'll go the same cycle from a 0 point. Hopefully, this is not happening. We all hope, we pray to God that our brothers in Libya realize, that there is a real opportunity for them, and the same also must apply in Lebanon. We hope that the Lebanese people realize that it's not France or not Egypt or United States or any other major power in the world that can help them more than the help that can be expected from the Lebanese people themselves
yes.
to their own people and to their own state. After all, we should remember that Lebanon, I'm talking about geography, is a very small country in size. It's like 10.700,000 square kilometers in size, which is like 1 or 2 Egyptian governorates. And with a population of nearly 7 million, it's not big deal to reach, sort of agreement.
Yes.
There are countries like India with population more than 1.6 billion inhabitants. And they sit together and they put hands together. We talk only about 6 million or 6.5 million inhabitants in Lebanon, in a very tiny place, and surrounded with a lot of challenges. And I think one of the ironic issues about this issue is that Lebanon is, as a people, is a people of culture.
Yes.
We talk about literacy, we talk about poets, we talk about
arts and culture,
arts, we
and
talk
thought
about
and
culture, we
literature.
talk about different arts. And Lebanon is a minaret itself. We have to remember that. Lebanon is not just like any other Arab country. It's a country with a big legend of literal heritage.
Yes.
In terms of education, in terms of arts, in terms of printing. And most of the big and most famous books that were printed in the Middle East in the last 100 years were coming from Lebanon printers. So,
but the West, Western powers are refusing to release any funds of even the aid conference or the aid donors conference, as we did see in the past days. The West are saying that in Lebanon you need to be fighting corruption, fight unemployment, form a government, and then we release the funds. How do you see this stance?
I can't blame them, indeed. This is a must. It's a precondition for, I mean, if, as we say, if Lebanese people, do not feel the pain of the crisis themselves, how can we ask other people to be feeling this pain? they have to put their fingers on the necessary steps that must be taken today. And you talk about most of the problems today, corruption, you talk about ethnic clashes and differences that go much higher and supersedes the national interest of Lebanon as a state. And this must stop. This must stop immediately. And of course, okay, let us say that France or United States or any other major power or Egypt or Saudi Arabia, has given, Lebanese state a huge amount of support, money or whatever. Well, would that change the nature of the problem they are living through today? No, it will not change it. Simply because still the problem does exist on the ground. The state, the people, and the government, whatever the government should be,
Yes.
in the near future, hopefully, should face these challenges. And of course, they must put at the first target in their challenges that must face once the government is formed, is fighting corruption. And of course, there are chronic problems like Hezbollah and other militias. I must admit that this is not an easy task for any government to be handled in the near future. But if we go with the country in Lebanon in the direction of stability, maybe after some time we can address this issue easily and territorially. And we have and also we have to stop looking at a country like Lebanon as a playground for exercising the influence of territorial powers, like Turkey or Iran or whatever. So what would make this stop immediately? That Lebanese people themselves realize the dilemma and the problem that they are living today and decide to stop it and decide to set themselves on the right direction, starting from forming a government, which is, I have to say, the easiest task could be to be fulfilled today. But so far they didn't do it. We have to remember that Saad al-Hariri was designated as prime minister
and
for
resigned.
months and months.
And he resigned.
And because of political differences, he resigned. He couldn't continue because all his choices were rejected, and that continued for months and months. Hopefully, Naguib Mikati, would not go through the same,
Would that
fate.
be the solution, just replacing one prime minister with the other?
No, it's not the solution. And if names are solutions, probably Saad al-Hariri would be the one that have a lot of solutions at hand. It's not actually that's not the reality there. It's that the different groups and sectarian groups and influential groups in Lebanon, they are not sitting together and they are not willing to join hands. And every sectarian group, every attitude or every direction, think that they have to be the higher and the more powerful, which is not acceptable in terms of running a country like Lebanon or any other country. This is the homeland for Lebanese people, for the whole Lebanese people, and there must be a way to make sort of purification or filtering this sort of lingering problems that go over time for years and years. And a lot of problems caused by this, starting, we cannot remember the civil war that started in 1975 and continued for probably more than 15 years until 1990. 15 years of continuous war against each other. Isn't that enough? Well, it's enough. It must be enough. I mean, what else do they need to have to themselves? I think Lebanese people have lost a lot of potentials and a lot of resources while they are thinking how to hit each other. And I do think today that this is time for them to think about, reconciliation, think about reforms, think about joining hands. We cannot go very far when we talk about this. We talk about Israel and its relation with Arab countries. 30 years ago, there was a very strong, anti-relations between Israel and most of Arab countries. Today we have the situation has changed between Israel and, for instance, United Arab Emirates, Qatar, Morocco, Sudan, and other Arab countries are seeking to go to normalization. If you do this with Israelis, can't you do this with your own people of your own country? This is a question, and they have to think about that.
Najib Mikati was appointed as the Prime Minister of Lebanon twice. Saad al-Hariri, I think, 2 or 3 times in the past as well. Why do you think they keep repeating the same names with the same cycle? They do have the same outcome, the result.
Yes, well, that's a good question indeed. I do believe that this chronic issue is caused by the fact that sectarian considerations usually superseding national interests, the larger national interests. It's ethnicities that has the upper hand in Lebanon. That's why you see the names as leaders of each sectarian group or ethnic group there, and the whole group is mobilized behind this key figure or this key name or big name, whether Sunni or Shia or Durzi or Christian or whatever, and it goes like that for years and years, because they don't think about the national interests. They don't think about how to fight or how to confront their national challenges. All they think about is how to impose their narrow interests over other, sectarian groups, which is a disaster, I have to say, that keeps Lebanon, circling around itself, but not moving ahead. And of course, losing a lot of its potentials. And it's really tough for us as Arab people to see what's going on in the streets of Beirut today. Beirut is a city of beauty, is a city of luxuriousness, is a city of creation, and city of a higher standard of many things. We cannot be happy seeing the streets of Beirut today a battleground for fighting. This is really a tough scene for us.
Yes, a very beautiful country with very beautiful people, as you've mentioned, people of arts, culture and thought.
Everything, they have everything.
And we are entering a new Hijri year, 1443, congratulations on that. And we hope that peace and prosperity would be surrounding Egypt and the whole of the Arab world. Dr. Ibrahim Al-Ghazawy, the Professor of International Law, thank you very much for being with us tonight on the Daily Debate.
Thank you so much.
As I said, we are entering a new Hijri year, and we are celebrating that in Egypt, and hopefully the upcoming year will be filled with peace and prosperity for Egypt, for the Arab world, for Africa, and for the world in general. Thank you for watching, and goodbye.